The truth behind the Tower of Babel. Who erected it and where did it stand? Did the Tower of Babel actually exist, or was it just a tale crafted by ancient civilizations for the purpose of indoctrination? You are about to uncover the truth about one of humanity's greatest mysteries that challenges the beliefs of even the most skeptical. Imagine if it was said that the legendary Tower of Babel, more than just a simple myth, could be a hidden historical reality in plain sight. While critics debate, a millennia-old stone, unearthed from the sands of time in ancient Babylon, promises to turn what we know upside down. Are you ready to have your mind opened? The myth of the Tower of Babel. Without a shadow of a doubt, the saga of the Tower of Babel is one of the oldest accounts that has persisted throughout the ages, permeating a wide variety of beliefs and cultures globally. Narrated in the book of Genesis of the Holy Bible, it addresses the origin of multiple human languages. Historians view the Tower of Babel as a foundational myth, offering a theory about global linguistic diversity. The plot begins shortly after the flood, survived by Noah and his descendants. These individuals aim to build a tower that reached the heavens, an effort to prevent human dispersion and immortalize the tower's name. However, as is popularly said, humanity's great dilemma lies within humanity itself. Despite a unified purpose of reaching the divine, this collective ended up provoking divine wrath. God, dissatisfied with what he saw, decided to intervene, resulting in a whirlwind of confusion by imposing different languages on the builders. This communicative barrier culminated in the cessation of construction, with humans unable to understand each other, dispersing to different parts of the globe. The origin of the name, Tower of Babel. The term Tower of Babel is not explicitly mentioned in the Old Testament, but ended up being the widely adopted name for the structure located in the city of Babel. Investigating the meanings of the name, we find that Tower alludes to an observation post, while Babel derives from Babel, translating as Gate of God, a junction of Akkadian Ba with Hebrew El. Alternatively, the word can also be etymologically analyzed from a similar Hebrew root that refers to confusion and mixture, maintaining a phonetic connection with Babel. Culturally, Babel came to symbolize the location of divine verdict, marking the birth of linguistic differences and the beginning of language diversity. After the flood, God instructed humans to disperse and populate the earth. However, defying this divine command, a group chose to unify, erecting a city in the plain of Shinar, which would come to be known as Babel. This place has the distinction of being the first city mentioned in the Bible after the flood. Over time, the area where Babel was founded evolved into the renowned Babylon. According to biblical accounts, Nimrod, one of Noah's descendants, was the one who established Babel. This same individual is also credited with the founding of other notable cities, such as Erech, Akkad, and Calneh, during his travels. Upon reaching Syria, Nimrod continued his journey of building, creating even more cities. The essence of the Holy Bible. About 2,500 years ago, a crucial chapter in human saga began to be documented. This period marks the beginning of the record of the relationship between God and humanity, initially transmitted orally and then consolidated into the text that would become the pillar of Christianity, the Holy Bible. This ancestral document, with its meticulously crafted writings on papyrus that endured through the centuries, constitutes a unique literary piece. The Bible was composed over a vast span of time, gathering contributions from about 40 authors. Its stories and teachings, dating from 1500 BCE to 450 BCE, reflect the views and experiences of these individuals, considered by many as figures enlightened by divine grace. The narratives that form the core of the Bible are not simple, isolated tales. They represent the fusion of myths and legends that thrived in the region of the ancient land of Canaan, encompassing what is now known as Lebanon, Israel, Palestine, and parts of Jordan. This rich cultural and historical mosaic predates the invention of the printing press in 1455, a period when the reproduction of the Bible depended on the meticulous work of scribes. These scribes devotedly engaged in the task of hand-copying the sacred texts, an activity immortalized by the Italian writer Umberto Eco in his renowned work, The Name of the Rose. It was only in the 16th century that the German theologian Martin Luther undertook the monumental task of translating the biblical texts into a modern language, working directly from the original Hebrew and Greek texts. The historical significance of the Bible is immeasurable, standing out not only in the religious realm, but also for its decisive role in shaping Western society. It profoundly influenced the historical, cultural, and ethical identity not only of Brazil but of the entire West and, in many aspects, global society. Therefore, this ancestral text continues to influence and inspire generations, playing a transformative role in humanity throughout the centuries. The story of the Tower of Babel, specifically, is not seen as a factual historical event by historians, but rather as a foundational myth among the Hebrews, a common phenomenon among ancient peoples. The Tower of Babel in history. When addressing the Tower of Babel, it is essential to recognize that if it truly existed, it was likely a ziggurat, a significant structure in Mesopotamia. Originating from the Sumerians around 3000 BCE and adopted by other Mesopotamian peoples, ziggurats served central functions in the cities where they were built. Besides centralizing administration, these constructions are believed to have had religious purposes, housing temples dedicated to various gods, reflecting the polytheistic nature of these societies. Through archaeology, we now know of the existence of several of these structures. The exact function of the ziggurats is still a subject of study, but many researchers suggest that they had a cosmological function within Mesopotamian culture, serving as points of connection between heaven and earth. This view highlights the complexity and depth of Mesopotamian belief and architecture, revealing the rich cultural tapestry that forms our collective past. Some historians suggest that the Tower of Babel may have indeed been a ziggurat located in the city of Babylon, dating from some time between the 14th and 11th centuries BCE. This structure, erected by the Babylonians in praise of Marduk, the creator god, was described by the Greek historian Herodotus as an impressive tower of solid carved stones with a length and width of 200 meters and several superimposed towers. The name Etemenanke was interpreted as the house that is the foundation of heaven and earth, and the construction reached about 90 meters in height, but did not survive the test of time. The association of this structure with the Tower of Babel, however, remains a hypothesis among some historians. Interestingly, the Sumerians had a similar myth to that of the Tower of Babel, titled Enmerkar and the Lord of Aratta, where a god intervenes by altering humans' language, causing great confusion among them. Therefore, the intersection between myth and archaeology continues to fascinate historians, offering an intriguing window into the past of Mesopotamia. From that moment on, as narrated in the book of Genesis, the Lord scattered the people over the surface of the earth, marking the end of the tower's construction. In the verses of Genesis 11:3-4, we find a detailed description of this episode. Bricks were used as stones and bitumen served as mortar. This passage of the Holy Bible details the events on the plain of Shinar, where the city known as Babel rose, offering a clear account of the development until its abrupt interruption. Holy Bible versus history. The role of archaeology. This historical context, probably situated in southern Mesopotamia, opens a gateway to archaeological, cultural, and historical exploration of the area. The question then arises, are there historical evidences that corroborate the biblical narrative about the confusion of languages in Babel, as mentioned in the early records of Mesopotamia? In the verses of Genesis 11:3-4, we find a detailed description of this episode. Bricks were used as stones, and bitumen served as mortar. This passage of the Holy Bible details the events on the plain of Shinar, where the city known as Babel rose, offering a clear account of the development until its abrupt interruption. Holy Bible versus history. The role of archaeology. This historical context, probably situated in southern Mesopotamia, opens a gateway to archaeological, cultural, and historical exploration of the area. The question then arises, are there historical evidences that corroborate the biblical narrative about the confusion of languages in Babel, as mentioned in the early records of Mesopotamia? He demanded a special tribute of precious materials from the anonymous ruler of Arata. This parallel suggests a connection between ancient stories and the biblical narrative, although the interpretation and direct correlation between historical sources and biblical texts are complex and subject to debate. The story of the Tower of Babel, intertwined with archaeology, remains a fascinating field of study that offers a unique insight into the Mesopotamian past, while remaining shrouded in mysteries and diverse theories. In the Bible, the Tower of Babel. As recorded in the Bible, at a time when the whole world shared a single language and way of speaking, people migrated to the east, where they found a plain in Shinar and decided to settle. They proposed, "Come, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly." They used brick instead of stone and bitumen for mortar. With the intention of making a name for themselves and avoiding being scattered over the face of the earth, they said, "Let us build a city and a tower whose top reaches to the heavens." However, the Lord came down to see the city and the tower that the men were building. Realizing that with one language, nothing they planned would be impossible for them, God decided, "Come, let us go down and confuse their language, so they will not understand each other." So the Lord scattered them from there over all the earth, and the building of the city ceased. This place was called Babel, because it was there that the Lord confused the language of the whole earth. By drawing parallels between Sumerian history and the biblical narrative, we realize that Nimrod, identified as the builder of the Tower of Babel in Genesis 10:8-10, is presented not only as the likely founder of Babel, but also as a distinct hunter in the eyes of the Lord. This connection leads us to reflect on the history of Enmerkar, revealed by archaeological discoveries, which includes the construction of a tower. At a key moment, the king implores the god Enlil to restore linguistic unity among the people of the regions of Shubur, Hamazi, Sumer, Akkad, and the land of Martu, highlighting the desire for unified worship under a single language. Several scholars have pointed out similarities between this cuneiform tablet and the biblical account of the Tower of Babel, suggesting that such a myth could reflect the memory of a real historical event that occurred at the end of the 4th millennium BCE, long before the composition of the Holy Bible. Interestingly, before biblical codification, George Smith, a prominent Assyriologist at the British Museum, translated a fragment that, although smaller than that of Enmerkar, recounts the collapse of a tower that displeased the gods. Smith interpreted that the gods made their speech strange, a phrase that some experts see as a reference to the confusion of languages, echoing the biblical account. These findings underline the fascinating possibility that if the biblical episode has a historical basis, it likely occurred in Mesopotamia, the same region where such tablets were found, now part of Iraq. The southern plains of Babylonia still preserve ruins of monumental towers dating back to the 3rd millennium BCE. Although we cannot definitively assert that any of these structures is the Tower of Babel, the biblical description of its construction resonates with architectural practices in the region, especially in the use of burnt bricks instead of stone and bitumen as mortar in response to the scarcity of quarries in the region. Genesis chapter 11 details the use of special materials, such as bricks and bitumen, in the construction of the tower, a construction method resembling ancient Mesopotamian towers built on brick platforms as opposed to pyramids. These details not only provide a rich tapestry of information about ancient practices, but also offer a window into understanding the intersection between biblical faith and recorded human history through archaeology. Mesopotamian towers, contrary to what one might suppose, did not house tombs or hidden treasures, although occasionally they might contain small embedded cavities. Records about the foundation of these structures indicate that many of them began as ascending terraces, accessible through sloping ramps and external staircases, culminating in a sanctuary at the top. More than mere places of worship, ziggurats served as community meeting points, aiming to unite people and prevent their dispersion, a concept that echoes in various ancient records. This principle of congregation around ziggurats played a crucial role in the formation of urban centers, which eventually evolved into named cities, documented on cuneiform tablets found beneath the structures. Etymology, the connection with the Tower of Babel. Among the most impressive ruins stands out the Tower of Birs Nimrud, rising majestically over 45 meters tall, an irregular mass of masonry that survives through time. Although several of these structures have been identified at different times as the legendary Tower of Babel, the direct association with the biblical narrative remains uncertain. However, archaeological evidence reinforces the accounts of Genesis, suggesting a historical basis for the existence of such towers. Currently, most experts tend to agree that the Tower of Babel mentioned in the scriptures probably stood within the fortifications of what would become the grand city of Babylon. This interpretation aligns archaeological findings with biblical descriptions, offering a more concrete view of the origin and purpose of these fascinating ancient structures. Through archaeology, we unveil a panorama of human ingenuity and spirituality, revealing how these ancient monuments not only reached for the heavens in their monumental architecture, but also united people around common values and shared beliefs, echoing the story of the Tower of Babel in ways that transcend the mythical, anchoring them in the historical and cultural reality of Mesopotamia. The site, later known as Etymology, was possibly the famous temple in ruins of Babel, a notion widely accepted by the academic community. However, when we look at other constructions, such as those of Akar Kuf and Birs Nimrud, we notice that little remains beyond the robust square bases. The biblical narrative, along with archaeological findings, clarifies the development of temple towers and ziggurats in Mesopotamia, allowing scholars to better understand the original context of the Shinar Plain region, where Babel was established. These historical discoveries shed light on millennia-old events in southern Mesopotamia, such as the ziggurat of Uruk, the oldest of these towers ever found, dating back to approximately 4,300 to 3,500 BCE. This structure, with its 16 temple levels, reflects the political evolution through the ages. The practice of building new sanctuaries on the ruins of the old, as seen in Uruk, suggests that this method was common. Cities like Mari and Ebla also exhibited ziggurats that accumulated over the ages, built by various monarchs. It is quite possible that an ancient ziggurat served as the foundation for subsequent constructions, providing a rich field of study about the Tower of Babel in the light of Mesopotamian culture and history. The biblical story of the Tower of Babel, when viewed alongside these archaeological discoveries, indicates that the tower mentioned in the scriptures was likely a ziggurat situated in southern Mesopotamia. This is in line with the central role of ziggurats in the civilizations of this region, from the dawn of urbanization to the Neo-Babylonian period. The biblical narrative paints the Tower of Babel as an ambitious project, divinely interrupted, symbolizing a moment of slowdown in the urban advancement of what would become Babel. This interpretation harmonizes with archaeological evidence and the record of the development of writing, language, and settlement patterns in Mesopotamia. Genesis chapter 11 narrates a moment that precedes full urbanization, as evidenced by archaeological discoveries. The writing of this era, although primitive and mostly used for economic purposes, did not yet record such development. The Ubaid period, one of the oldest in Mesopotamia, reveals fascinating early settlements, often marked by the construction of ziggurats as pillars of these ancestral communities. But did the Tower of Babel really exist? Historically, biblical narratives were accepted unquestionably regarding their literalness. However, today the direct interpretation of these accounts is questioned, suggesting that they carry deeper symbolic meanings. There is the intriguing possibility that these ancient texts carry remarkable accuracy, reflecting our ancestors' advanced knowledge of their world. The Tower of Babel, as described, was a monumental construction that, according to the scriptures, sought to reach the heavens. This act of audacity was seen as challenging and harmful, leading to divine intervention resulting in linguistic diversity and the dispersion of humanity. In the contemporary world, we have the Burj Khalifa, an architectural marvel that rises over 820 meters. This leads us to question, could science validate the existence of an even more imposing Tower of Babel? Evaluating ancient engineering, especially in terms of height, we discover that the bricks of the time could bear an impressive load, enabling the construction of significantly tall structures. With bricks capable of supporting up to 400 times their weight, theoretically, we could achieve considerable heights, rivaling modern monuments. Although Mesopotamian ruins like ziggurats evidence advanced engineering knowledge, the true height of the Tower of Babel remains a fascinating mystery, intertwining history, myth, and archaeology in a continuous quest for understanding. A recent study related to an ancient stone discovered in the ruins of the famous Babylon, now part of Iraq, has been causing a stir among archaeologists and Bible scholars. This object, dating back to the 6th century BCE, may shed light on the reality of the Tower of Babel, one of the most emblematic accounts in the book of Genesis. The renowned professor from the University of London played a crucial role in bringing this discovery to light, meticulously analyzing the stone and recognizing a design showing a stepped tower alongside a human figure with a spear and a conical hat, distinctive of Mesopotamian culture. Surprisingly, the inscription beneath the image mentions a ziggurat, a term referring to a pyramidal structure, or even the Temple of Babylon, as interpreted by Professor Jorge. The detailed analysis of this artifact, highlighting the 7 layers of the tower and the human figure, points directly to Nebuchadnezzar. This rare piece not only provides an impressive visual representation of the Tower of Babel, but also details the construction method employed. What makes this discovery particularly fascinating is the coincidence between the description on the stone and the biblical narrative of the Tower of Babel, reinforcing suspicions of Jorge and other experts regarding its authenticity. As reported in Genesis, the first part of the Bible, the tower would have been erected by Noah's descendants after the flood. The narrative records that the intention behind the monumental Tower of Babel was to establish a direct channel of communication with the divine. However, according to the scriptures, the project was abruptly interrupted, reflecting humanity's excessive pride and subsequent divine reprimand. It is assumed that if it really existed, the tower was situated in the Babylonian capital, known as Babel, characterized as a ziggurat, a structure composed of stepped terraces. Nebuchadnezzar, often celebrated as one of the most influential Babylonian emperors, whose reign from 604 to 562 BCE was marked by remarkable achievements and architectural innovations, such as the construction of canals, aqueducts, and reservoirs, could have a direct connection to this legendary construction. Such a discovery renews the enthusiasm of academics and archaeologists, opening new windows for understanding one of the most fascinating mysteries of human history, while subsequent research promises to deepen our knowledge of ancient civilizations and their interaction with biblical accounts. By unraveling the truth about the Tower of Babel, we embark on a saga that spans centuries and cultures. This myth, inscribed in Genesis, offers us an intriguing insight into the origin of linguistic diversity and the complexities of human communication. Our exploration of the archaeological records of ancient Mesopotamia, where structures like Etymology resonate with the building of the mythical tower, is enriched by the recent find that introduces a new dimension to the quest for truth. The discovered stone, displaying a human figure and inscriptions mentioning the ziggurat and the Temple of Babylon, encourages further investigation to clarify its relationship with the Tower of Babel, suggesting the reality of this sky-challenging structure. As science and archaeology continue to unearth secrets of the past, the Tower of Babel remains a captivating enigma, stimulating our curiosity and determination to understand the stories that shape our world. Whether as myth or reality, the Tower of Babel challenges us to expand the horizons of knowledge and unravel the mysteries of our earthly existence. Want more mysteries unveiled? Follow the channel, activate notifications, comment your discoveries, and share with friends. Every click propels us to delve deeper into the next adventures. Stay with us and be part of every discovery. Until the next revelation,